Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 23. I really should check before I start. I think it's week 23. Anyway, it's June the 3rd, or it will be when you watch this, and today is my birthday. I have been 59 times around the sun. So I'm really happy that my birthday falls on a Monday and I can share it with you all. So I thought I'd treat myself, and hopefully you if you enjoy it, and do a slightly more involved project over 2 Mondays. I've been wanting for a long time to look at crazy patchwork and the embroidery that goes with it. So, and obviously that is quite involved in terms of constructing the blocks and then, you know, the crazy embellishments that you do afterwards. So I thought it was a good idea to do it over 2 weeks. And if you've seen the video that I uploaded a day or so ago with the stitches for crazy patchwork, then you already know what we're going to do. I thought that would be a handy way for you to have a reference guide for the stitching done on a plain piece of cloth, rather than having to go back through the, you know, hours and hours and hours of my videos looking for specific stitches. So that's why I did that. So this week we're going to primarily construct the block, and we'll see how the time goes, whether we start the stitching or not. And then next Monday I'll do my fancy stitching. I might even sit here on the sofa and do it with you, and we can have a chat at the same time. I hope that sounds great. I hope you like the sound of that. You can do crazy patchwork any number of ways. You can do it the traditional way, and I've chosen kind of cloths that fit in with that, but you could of course do a more contemporary style. If you're an eco printer, you could do it with your eco printed cloths. I've got some little samples in progress to show you as well. So without any further ado, let me get to my desk and we can get started. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say is, do you remember I said a while ago that I'd realised that there are 53 Mondays in 2024, and I know many of you have only put 52 pages in our journal. By doing one block over 2 weeks, we take care of that, don't we? If you really don't like the idea of missing a week, then maybe you could do 2 blocks. You know, I don't know. Anyway, so before we start, I just want to show you a couple of books that I've had for a long time. The first one is this. I'll try and angle it so it doesn't glare. And it's called The Magic of Crazy Quilting by J. Marsha Mishler. And this is particularly wonderful. Sorry, it's a bit up in your face. Because apart from all the lovely inspirational photos in it, not only does it tell you all the embroidery stitches you can use, it also shows, it has these lovely diagrams of stitch combinations. Do you see? So I don't know if that's still available. It was published in, there's a date. Tell me a date, 2003, which doesn't seem like very long ago, but it was actually 21 years ago. But anyway, that's The Magic of Crazy Quilting by J. Marsha Mishler. And the other one is this little book, which is delightful. This is called Elegant Stitches by Judith Baker Montano. And it's not specifically about crazy quilting, but that is very much her style. And this, I think, is from the 70s originally. And it's ring bound, so it sits nice and open. And it shows you all the stitches. It's even got a section showing them left-handed, which is brilliant. And then it's got a whole chapter called Crazy Quilt Combinations. And then it's got diagrams of stitching, how to combine them, and then down the side it tells you which stitches are used, loads of them. So if you can find that anywhere secondhand, if you don't have it already, highly recommend that one. So there's my books, it's my books of the week. So before I tell you what you'll need, I just want to show you these. I've made these because I don't know what I'm going to make with them. Maybe a rice bag, who knows? Maybe a cushion. These are with my eco print fabric, so if you're not into that sort of Victoriana style, you know, all those colours, I've made these with my eco print fabrics. So they're all grungy and browns and, you know, earthy colours. I've done 4, and this one I've started stitching on already. Now this stitching is, I think it was a rainy Sunday afternoon and 2 or 3 evenings. And I'm nowhere near embellished. These are quite big. I think they're about 8 inches square. So yeah, it's a lot of we won't call it work. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of time. Okay, so that's those. So what you'll need is a foundation square. Those of you that didn't enjoy borrow will always be glad to hear me say a foundation square. I've just got some thin sheet. You don't traditionally put wadding in crazy quilts, although you can if you want, but still you'd work on a foundation square first, I think, if you wanted to make a quilt. And they're either made of piece squares, or you can do a bigger piece, or sometimes you'll see them done in long strips. I'm thinking it'd be nice to do a stitch meditation scroll crazy style, but you know, Catherine, rein your brain in. So anyway, sorry, you need a foundation square, and then you'll need some cloths. Now I've got, this is a good place to use all your Trixie cloths. Let me try and bring this in. I've gone for a colour palette of sort of pinks and purples really. I sort of took inspiration from this scrap of my skirt. This piece I did not dye with tea, so it's still, I used it in Backstory if you remember it. So that's an idea. If you're not sure of a colour combination, pick a piece of cloth that's patterned and then take the colours from that. So you see in here I've got this pinky colour, so I've got some pink silk sari that goes with it. It's also got a bit of blue braid on one end that I may or may not use. It's got purple, so I've got this. This is actually a very dark midnight blue, but it's in the same, you know, close or thereabouts. And here's a bit of purple. It's just a scrap of quilter's cotton. This is shot silk taffeta. And then I've got this. It's red, but it's more sort of towards the pinky red. It's just upholstery. It's an upholstery swatch sample. I couldn't find any sort of real tealy blue, but I had this bit of hand-painted silk. I think it's from a thrifted scarf. But that's got all the colours in. That's, you know, the perfect partner to that. And then I had this, which is off that same sari, it's the border from it, which is blue, but it's, you know, it's going towards the greeny blue end of that. And then for sort of drama, I got this bit of velvet. I think it's polyester velvet. It's got a weird backing on it. I made a handbag out of it years ago. I got it at a flea market. But it just says Victorian to me, and it's got these gold details on it. Not nice to stitch, but I'll bear with it. Another light, I got this print. It's a Liberty type. I don't think it is Liberty, but it's that cotton lawn, you know. But that's got the greens and the blues, similar to that. I got a bit of black. Again, I think it's polyester. In fact, I'm sure it is because the weave is very even and it feels cold, so it's not silk. And then this, which is silk, which is a bit of gold, just for, again, for the drama. And I don't know that I'm going to cram all of these into this tiny patch. Probably not, but I just wanted to have a good selection. And they're big-ish scraps, because you do a lot of trimming when you do this. So you will make lots more scraps, but you need biggish scraps to start with. And then further down the line, probably not today, you'll need maybe some beads if you like that kind of thing, and some buttons, and all kinds of colours of thread. I've got embroidery thread here. I've also got my Ort standing by in a new tin, which my daughter brought me from Italy recently. Had sweeties in, I've eaten them. You could also get some thicker threads, which I haven't got any standing by, but you know what a thick thread looks like. You know, like wool or that thick cotton or anything for couching on. Some laces. I told you there was a lot. But again, this is probably all coming next week. Although rather the laces, you can trap them in the seam. So if you've got some bits of lace, you could have some standing by. So you can actually trap it in as you're constructing the block. What else? Threads, needles, pins, so on. I've got my both scissors here. I've got my Snippy Fiskars, thank you Sue, and I've got my old Fiskars. I'm going to put my Snippies away because my old ones, which need a new name because they're not Snippy, I'm going to use because of all the polyester and everything. That can blunt your scissors if you cut a lot of polyester with them. So I'm putting these safely to one side so I don't use them. And I think that's it. So here's my foundation square. Now there's the traditional way of piecing is to stitch a seam and turn it over. I'm not going to do that. Well, I might do it a bit. I was watching Marion again. She did one of her months in her Slowstitch journal, Marion on Marion's World. And she did a whole month, 4 weeks of it, I think. of Crazy Patchwork, and she was laying on her pieces all raw edge and blaming, no, she wasn't, I don't mean blaming me, she was saying it was my, let's say, inspiration to do it all raw edge. Ironically, until I watched that, I was doing seams in all mine with my eco ones. And I put Marion on while I was doing that to watch those videos again. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll do it raw edge as well. So basically a combination is what I'm going to do. However suits the cloth, however I feel, whatever. So the received wisdom, you can basically start anywhere. The received wisdom is that you start in the middle with a 5-sided shape of some kind, and then work your way out from that shape. You could also just start in a corner and work your way up. You know, if you're going to make several, then maybe give them all a try and see. I'll just show you with these. This one here that I've already started stitching on, I started with this 5-sided shape here in the middle, and then you see I joined these pieces with seams. It's kind of like a wonky log cabin if you look at it like that, only without, you know, straight logs, and radiated round and then filled in the gaps. And then here and there I did raw edge. So that was done that way. That's the look of that. Whereas this one I just made it up as I went along. Where did I start? I don't even really remember. I think I maybe started in this corner maybe and built it up that way. But, you know, it's cloth collage in a sense, but to get that crazy look, you want all your pieces to be angular. That one again, I just made it up as I went along. Some seams over, some seams under. So anyway, let's do it let's start the proper way and see where we go. So I think in the middle I wanted to start with that thick bit of velvety stuff. And I don't know if I want some of this gold in because it feels plasticky and I'm not sure if I like it or not. I think I just like that. So I'm going to cut myself, and sort of bearing in mind the size of my patch, I don't want to go too big because I want to leave room for other cloth. I'm just going to cut it, dear Henry. It's polyester, it's not nice. Anyway, best to use it than put it in landfill. So to cut a 5-sided shape can be challenging. Usually ends up looking like a little house. I kind of have to hold it there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you don't want any of your sides to be too small, but at the same time you don't want any of them to be, you know, you want it to be uneven and not come out. Mine usually come out looking like a little house. So if I went there, I'm going to get some gold in, and I'm going to get a right angle. How to overthink something. I'm going to go slightly more oblique angle. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I cut straight across there, excuse me. Got a strange corner there, but that'll do, pig. I'm not sure I want to throw those in my scraps. I'll see. So, and then you don't want it, you wouldn't want it, you know, lined up anywhere. You want it cattywampus and crazy, and preferably not dead centre either. So I think you don't want it too close to the, there's a lot of don'ts. Slap it down, just slap it down. And I might just put a little applique pin through the middle just to hold it. So now I want to start going around the edge of it. Another tip is try not to, you're going to work your way round, try not to have your last round as your long side, because the last round is going to straddle 2 other patches, so you're going to end up with a super long piece. On a little block like this it probably doesn't matter, but ideally I want my last round to be my shortest side. So I think I'm going to start with this side here, so I'm going to turn it that way up. And then you can decide at this stage, do you want to lay your patch on raw edge? So then you just lay it on like that, and I'm going to use the invisible baste. Excuse me, I'm so sorry for this tickle. I'm going to use the invisible baste where necessary, or if it's a thin cloth like this silk, you could decide that you were going to do a normal seam. So in which case you just flip it over right sides together, make sure you've got enough to match the length of your underneath patch, And if you want it to come to the edge of your cloth, it needs to be big enough that way as well. So it's always a good idea to have it too big, and then you can trim it back. So you see, if I stitch that there and put that like that, I'm going to end up with a little bit here, but I can trim it and put something else, you know. So it's just up, this has got, what do you call it, interfacing stuck to the back of it. Not nice, not nice stuff. I have no clue why. I've had this, well, it was my husband's cravat at one point till I pinched it from him. Anyway, so I'm just going to sew, I'm going to put a pin because they're both tricksy. And I'm going to sew a seam along there. I've got my my darning cotton that I'm still using for piecing till it runs out. Now again, the seam doesn't really matter how thick you do it, how wide you do it, sorry. This is quite fragile, this silk, so I'm going a good 1/4 inch, maybe even 1/2 inch. And you don't need to be too bothered about your seam being sturdy because you're going to do so much stitching over the top. So just a normal running stitch, in and out. And you only need to go to the end of the underneath patch. I can just feel with my thumb where it ends. Like that. And I'm going to cut my thread actually. It's easier, I think, to cut your thread every time because you're never in the right place. I'll just do one back stitch and snip it with the unsnippy siskers. Fiskers. What's the opposite of snippy? Answers in the comments. A new name for the old fiskers. And then you flip it up. And if it'll finger press, you finger press. If it won't, you put a pin just to hold it. And then I'm going to go this way. I'm not worrying about any of that for now. So the next piece I want to put here, across there. So do I want something light coloured up there? Not sure. I don't know if I want black on black. You see why we have to do this over 2 weeks. Do we want the purple? I could be here a while. I think I might have the purple. Now there's no need to trim this as long as you've got enough to go from this edge of your I'm calling this the under patch every time, and extend across this patch. So it needs to be that long. So I'm just going to lay it on like that. And I'm going to do another seam because it's cotton. And then I'm going to stitch it, but I'm not going to stitch it all the way along. I'm only stitching where the under patch is. So I'll stitch a little bit into this seam here. So I'm pointing my scissors. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to stitch to there. That's the only stitching I'm doing for now. Okay, clear as mud. I'm going to put a pin in it. You could, of course, if you wanted to, and you really got into this and you decided you wanted to make a huge quilt, do all this part on a sewing machine. If I got my edges lined up, I'd do all I should do. So you could just sit and make a load of, piece a load of blocks on your sewing machine. Excuse me, and then you could just use the longest stitch that your sewing machine does. Make yourself a great big pile of them, and then you've got them all there, and you can just go and embellish them. If I was going to make a quilt, that would be what I would do, I think. Unless you really wanted a project that was going to take you, years and years. And you liked hand piecing them. Okay, so that's that piece on. And again, I'm going to do a back stitch, just one back stitch, and cut my thread. Put a knot ready. It's not even necessary to knot. I mean, I say that often, it's not necessary to knot, and then I knot. Guess it's just habit. And then flip that up and press that seam. And I think I'm going to put a pin anyway. It does press because it's cotton, but and then turn it again. quite liking the look of that so far. Now I feel I want some of this pink. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Now this pink is very, very fine. It's got this weird thing happening. I will put that in the scraps because it's precious. Oh, it's shedding everywhere. So I'm going to double it up, which is going to give me a fake seam. So I'm going to lay it on. So this time I'm doing this line from there to there, and it needs to extend from here off. Sorry, you have to keep looking up. Well, unless you've cracked it already, you know, which is also possible, and just get on with your knitting or your crocheting or your stitching or whatever you're doing. It needs to extend from this point of the under patch, and it doesn't need to go all the way to the edge of there, obviously, because that extends off the edge of the block. But I do think it should come at least to the edge of my foundations patch, because it's going to just probably nicely fill that corner. Do you see? Do you see? Do you see? So I'm going to fold this, double this sari silk. I hope you noticed how lovely and flat all my cloth was. I pressed it. I don't know why I expect praise for ironing, which is what normal people do all the time. And then you see I'm just going to overlap that by quarter, half an inch or thereabouts. And then it's not a seam, but it also looked like a seam. And I'm just going to check that I've folded it far enough. I haven't. No, I've pressed it. I need to press it further. I shouldn't have done that finger pressing. I'll turn it the other way up and hide it. So I'm just going to lay that over there, overlapping by, you know, something, half an inch maybe. And then I'm going to put a couple of pins through that fold. I might even do 3. Making sure I'm still in the foundation cloth. Whoops, come on, in you go. There's a good lad. And what you can then do, before you sew that, if you've got a great big flippy floppy bit like that, is turn it all over. Make sure that it's all flat and where it should be. And just trim that. Oh, sorry, I made you rock and roll. Get your scissors under. And just trim that just in line with the edge of your foundation, just to stop it flopping around. I won't go ahead and trim that purple and gold yet because I don't know where I'm going to trim them. I could trim them now and trim them again, but you know. So that's quite big. I won't put that in the scraps, but I'll put that tiny bit in the scraps. There we go, and turn it back over. So now to sew that seam, because it's not really a seam, I'm going to pin the life out of it. I'm going to pin it around there as well, just because it's slippery and slidey. That'll do, pig. Right, where's my needle? There it is. I'm going to just invisible baste along that, because all these seams are going to have fancy embellishment all over them. So you're not going to see the invisible baste anyway, even if it's, you know, it's invisible anyway. Whoops. Oh, naughty. Come on. I must say, I'm liking the bright colours for a change. Treat myself on my birthday. I suppose I could do bright colours all the time if I wanted to. But I am enjoying stitching on the eco dyed ones as well. Pardon me. But I just thought, you know, let's have a bit of Victoriana. I did actually make some cushions years ago, before Joey was born even, so more than 22 years ago. And I was going to show them to you, and I went looking for them all around the house, and I finally found them out on the terrace, and they're in no fit state. They shouldn't have been left outside. They're mostly, you can only see the foundation fabric behind, and none of the stitching, so They really weren't fit to be seen. They're even beyond being mended, you know, being patched. I shouldn't have left them out, but there you go. I'm just finishing that on the back. You see I've puckered that a little bit, but it'll be all right. So turn it again. And now I want to do, I didn't come right to the end, it must have shifted. Doesn't matter. Now I want to do this seam. What colour to put there? I'm going to just trim that now because I made a error of judgment, shall we call it, and I just don't want that extra bulk underneath there for no good reason. What should we put there? About this. Don't want you. Not sure I like that against that. See, it's all these little decisions that you make of things against things. How about some of this? Yeah, maybe that there. Now that edge is on the bias, so it won't be fluffy, and I also know this linen doesn't tear very nicely and go fluffy, you know, fluffy frayed edges. Can I make that reasonably nice? Doesn't really matter again because you're going to put all the fancy stitching over the top. But so that one I could, I'm not sure because it's leaving a tiny bit again. I think I'm going to do it like that, and I think I am going to do a seam. I'm going to trim it just because it's so big, but I'm going to trim it way bigger, hopefully, than I need. And do a seam. I will do raw edge in a minute, I promise. Well, you know, I'll try. Maybe I won't. Don't have to. It's just an option. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that like that. I think I don't feel obliged, that's not the right word, but I mean, you know, since Marion did raw edge and said it was my influence, it feels a bit churlish to not do raw edge myself, somehow. Somehow. Come on, Trixie. It's because it's on the bias, it's all shifty. But because it's on a foundation, you can make it behave. Where's my needle? There we go. So I'm just sewing along that seam line. And I should have said again, I've extended past the outside edge of the foundation square. And just whip along here. While I'm just sewing this seam, can I just ask you all, please, and gently, to, well, rewind. I've heard here and there from various lovely other YouTubers that I watch about the YouTube algorithm, which I don't entirely understand, I must say, entirely or at all. But it seems that that some people are having difficulties. Some people are finding they're unsubscribed from channels they've subscribed to. Some people have found that even though they've got the notifications bell on, they're missing videos. I don't know what's going on, but it seems like there's something going on. And you know, a lot of my lovely fellow YouTube creators have been commenting on it. And another thing is, it seems that although people are getting, you know, the views and the shares and the likes and all your lovely comments and everything, they're not having as many new subscribers as they've been used to. And I don't know if, you know, I don't know what's happening. But can I just, well, firstly ask you, please, can you subscribe if you like what we're sharing with you? It's completely free, doesn't oblige you to do anything. If you subscribe and put the little bell on, you'll be notified when we post videos. If you don't want to be getting the notifications all the time, you know, you can just subscribe. I subscribe to people, quite honestly, and I only watch them occasionally, but I'm still a subscriber. It's just a way of supporting. So that was the first thing I wanted to ask you. there's a little underneath the video, and I know many of you watch on your TV, but you can get it up on your smartphone at the same time if you've got a smartphone or your tablet or whatever. And you know, make sure you give us the thumbs up and do the subscribe button and all that kind of thing. And the other thing is, could you please let the ads run if you really don't find it unbearable? You know, I think I've said it before, but I know that some YouTubers say that if people don't let the ads, you know, at the beginning of our videos, I don't have mid-reel ads, that's a personal choice that I make. I think I've said before I don't like being interrupted when I'm talking. But if there are ads, if you click that skip button, then YouTube doesn't give us anything, you know? And it really helps us if you could just let the ads run. I think I've said before, you know, what I do is I start the video playing if I'm going to watch, you know, Roxy Rachel or Jerry Bellini or Marion or any one of the lovely people I like to watch. I start it playing, I go and get my cup of tea, get my knitting or whatever I'm going to do, and then I come back and I watch. So the ads run. The lovely creators had their little bit of the share of the money from YouTube, and, you know, no skin off my nose kind of thing. So I just wanted to say that again. Thank you, you know, we so appreciate your support for what we do and everything, but okay, that's done. Oh, I don't like saying things like that. It feels like I've got my begging bowl out and, you know, but I just wanted to say it, so I hope you understand. Right, so I've got my last side of, I've done 1, 2, 3, I've done 4 patches, so here comes my last side. So the next piece I'm going to stitch along this line here. So I'm going to trim this bit of linen for starters. Actually, I think I'm going to put some pins in that seam line first to keep it still. So I'm just going to put my scissors under here and just trim in line with that line, I think. The advantage of crazy patchwork is it's crazy. So, oh, these scissors are really awful after my lovely new ones anyway. So you can't really go wrong, you know, because you can always stitch something else over it or couch something over it or sew a button over it or whatever. So now I'm going to end up with quite a long stretch here. So I think what I'm going to do before I sew anything on here is sew 2 pieces together. That's another thing you can do. So say I wanted that one there and then something else here. Do I want this other light bit? I think that's too light now I look at it there. How about this blue? Yep, I'm liking the blue. I don't know if I'm liking the red here. I think I'll do that. So I'm just going to stitch these 2 pieces together. Just if they had a right side, I'd put them right sides together. They don't really, so I'm just going to stitch them. Come here, needle. Just with a, you know, a seam, 1/2 inch maybe, because they're silk, but it would depend on what cloths they were. They're super slippery. It'll make a lovely sound there, especially the taffeta. Imagine a Victorian lady rustling around in her taffeta dress. What I've had going through my head, I think that's why I wanted to do crazy patchwork now, is the Paul Simon song, which I think will be what I'll write in my journal next week, which is called Still Crazy After All These Years. And I know I'm not, you know, super old, but birthdays always make you think about the passing of the years, don't they? So yeah, so I looked up about that song. Paul Simon, well, Simon and Garfunkel are 2 of my favourite singers. My favourite song of all time, in case anybody is remotely interested, is, well, I've got joint favourites really. Bridge Over Troubled Water, I just love that song. And the other one, slightly different, but I love it equally, is Midnight Train to Georgia by Gladys Knight and the Pips. But yeah, so the Paul Simon wrote Still Crazy when he was in his 30s, I believe. And there are some, this is a really tricksy seam, so do you know what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to baste it down. I need a new bit of cotton in there. I'm going to do an invisible baste along either side of the seam to make it behave. Yeah, when I was looking up about Still Crazy after all these years, you know how it goes, or if you don't, then look it up. There's some controversy whether it's a jolly song or a depressing song or a mixture of the two, or what it's all about. So I guess it's open to interpretation. But yeah, that's what I had going through my head for a while, and that made me think of Crazy Patchwork. Excuse me. So all I'm doing is holding the seams open. I've pressed it open with my fingers on the back. You can put pins if it helps you. And I'm just going to come up about 1/8 of an inch through that seam allowance from the middle and do some invisible basting. There's an extra step, but it saves all the fiddling. Not you know, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. If you had cotton and it finger pressed nicely, you probably wouldn't need to. It's just because I've got these tricksy silks. And again, you can see the tiny dots of my invisible base, but by the time, not if you get a knot. Still a knot, that's naughty. Come on, behave yourself. By the time you've done all your fancy embroidery over the top, excuse me, you won't see them anymore. They'll be gone. Come on, behave yourself. Super cold and windy again. I must stop moaning about the weather. I know especially that a lot of our friends in Australia, hello lovely friends down under, I'm not sure about New Zealand, but I know quite a few Aussies have been saying how dry it's been and how they're desperate for rain. And us up here in the northern hemisphere, I've had quite enough of it, certainly in, I know it's been cold and rainy in the Netherlands because Machtelt's told me. Hello Machtelt. And I know in England it's cold and rainy, off and on, and here it's certainly cold and rainy here in France, so I have to stop. I can hear the wind blowing now that's got up. It's really going to show up on this dark silk, but it won't matter. Oh, I didn't get enough threads then and it popped through, never mind. Right. And it's also possible that when I trim in a minute I'm going to cut through this stitching line, and that doesn't matter either. At least it doesn't matter to me. When you're machine stitching, obviously cutting through your stitches is less problematic than hand stitching, but the stitching lines all get crossed by another stitching line. So, right, so now I've got this great big bit of 2 bits joined. And I need to decide how and where that's going. Do I want the blue? No, I want it the other way because I don't want that dark next to that dark. So it's going to go along, again I'm in line with this, get that pin out now, the middle patch, you know, the first patch I laid on. So you can just sort of audition where how much of each you want and where you want the seam to fall. I think I want it to fall over there somewhere. And this is super long enough, it extends right past the foundation on both sides. So I'm going to do it there, I think. And now I can stitch all the way back from here if that's what I want to do, if I decide that that's how big that piece is going to be. I think I will. You see what I mean? So I'm going to put it along that line, which if I'd got these 2 bits of cloth straight would have been easier. And pin it, because it's shifty. That's the salvage of that bit of cloth, but it's too late now. I might rue the day when I come to stitch it. Now, I'm not going to trim this now, and always be careful if you're trimming and you've got angles, you know, because sometimes, I've done it many times, you trim it with it flip back like that, and then when you turn it up it's not big enough. This probably would be, because it's right near the corner. but I think it's always better to stitch it, flip it up and then trim it if it's under an angle, and then you won't make a boo-boo. So I'm going to just stitch, I don't know if I might even stitch all the way there. I'm going to turn that seam under, I haven't stitched that yet. And just have a look. No, I'm not going to. I'm going to just start here and I'm going to stop. I mean, yours will be different, it's just the principle. I'm going to start here on the edge of the foundation and stitch myself just up to the edge of my undercloth, my first cloth. Again, just with a... Actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut that off because I think that is going to be annoying. And that means I'm going to cut my stitching, but excuse me, talk amongst yourselves while I cut my selvage off with these not nice scissors. Sorry, you're all hoping that when Sue bought me the new scissors I would stop moaning about my scissors. Well, I don't want to blunt them. It'd be alright cutting the silk, I expect, but... Right, let's get it back on where it was. Did I have it that way? Yes, I did. Pinny pin pin. Excuse me. I can't get rid of this tickle. I'd had it on Wonky Wednesday already. So I don't think it's turning into anything, otherwise I think it would have turned into it already. Unless there's a pollen or something happening, or unless it's just the general dampness. Right, move out of the way, unloved Fiskars. I feel sorry for them now. It's not their fault. It's not their fault someone cut paper or something with them. I'm going to stitch all the way along this line. I'm again distracted by the sound of the thread going through the silk. I think thread going through silk and thread going through paper are the two best stitchy sounds. I wonder if people have made, I know there's those things called ASMR videos or things. I can't remember what ASMR stands for now, but it's a relaxation thing. And I know that there are whole videos of people just whispering, or the sound of, you know, rain on a roof, or it's just those soothing sounds. I wonder if anybody's made a video of just stitching. Get that pin out because there's something puckery going on there. It's all right. So I know some people say that I put them to sleep. And they mean it as a compliment, and I take it as a compliment. I wonder if I did as an experiment just a video just without me talking. Well, that would already be a challenge. Just the sound of stitching. What would happen? How it would be received in the YouTube universe. Right, I'm going to end that off and then take a view on what I'm going to do with that other seam in a minute. And I've done some trimming because I've got this huge weird looking thing now. And it kind of is weird as you go along, it kind of is ungainly, but then when you trim it, it's quite a nice transformation. Right, so finger press all that. When you say finger press, you often mean thumb press. So this corner up here I'm happy with. So I'm going to put pins first, I think. Make sure it's all laying flat. I'm pinning in, making sure I'm into the foundation as well and not off the edge of it. That would be somewhat pointless. And I'm going to turn it over and just trim this corner. Again, smoothing it down. I won't complain. So like I said, you see I'm going to cut through my stitching there, but I think it'll hold long enough. Excuse my arm in the way. It's better than that. And then let's turn it, that's maybe handier. Make sure it's all laying flat. Here comes Fred. Stella's sleeping peacefully on the sofa. Hopefully I'll just curl up behind her and not start shenanigans. There we go, that'll do. Pig. There you go, you see? So the minute you trim that, it makes more sense. So now I've got this last area here to finish off, and I find that's the most challenging bit really. And look, I've done all seams. I'm sorry, Marion. What can I do, raw edge? I'm not sure about that. Anyway, yeah, the most challenging to deal with really when you get round to the edge, because I don't want this great expanse of blue. So now I have to see how I'm going to lay something to do away with that great expanse of blue. I think I'm going to, and I want as much of that gold showing as possible. And here is where raw edge can be your friend, because then you can just sort of cut any shape you like and plonk it on. I think I do want this red in there somewhere somehow, but it's a bit small. I don't want to cut it too big. So do I want that blue to extend down there? No, I think I'm going to put something else over that corner. Just talk amongst yourselves while I sort my patch out. Or just cut it, Catherine. What's the worst that can happen? I'm going to just cut it there. Be brave. And then I'm going to cut some of this purple off as well to leave more of that yellow. If I cut it there. Again, you see, you don't have to worry about stitching into right angles and things when you've got the wonderful option of raw edgedness. If I flip that under like that, I can sort of audition where I want that to be. Do you see? I'm going to get a weird little pointy thing there if I do it like that. Does that bother me? Or do I want it slightly bigger? So now it's just fiddling about. See, that should come in a straight line. That is how it should be. But are we going to be rebellious and make it curve a bit to have more yellow showing? Do you know what? I think we are. What we could do, what I could do, is just take one stitch out there. That's it, because apparently that was bothering me. So that I can have it under a proper angle. Come out the way, Stitch. We don't need you no more. Like that. Do you see? Do you see? Do you see? And then there's some trimming to be done under there. I'll pin it first. Don't put a pin in your mouth, Catherine. I don't want it so right angle-y. I think I might take it even further up. See, I'm just pulling that from underneath and just fiddling about with it until it does what I want. Slightly more. I'm now very much into the realms of not the proper way to do it, I think, but you know. So I'm just going to audition that. I'm going to turn that behind and turn that behind. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. That's what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pin that fold in place. This super bent poor little pin that's been mistreated in its life. Like that. And then I can, from the back, trim some of that away. So I need to leave a fold, so I'm going to, do you see where there's my pin? I hope you can see. So I'm going to just trim it sort of along that line to start with, leaving about 1/4 or 1/2 inch away from the pin. Am I only in the purple? Yes, only the purple first. Like that. And then I can do the same with this bit of gold silk. Excuse my arm, but I'm just trimming it in exactly the same, along the same line as the purple, just to get rid of the bulk. Gone. There we go. And then I'm going to invisible base that fold down, again as if it was a seam. Actually, I could cut that off first as well. I'll turn it over and just trim that purple right back to the edge of the foundation piece. Sorry, there's a lot of talking about what I'm doing this week, but it is what it is. Next week, I just thought that would be nice as well, to just sit and do stitching on my comfy sofa over there. Not, you know, I'm quite comfy here, don't get me wrong. It would just be cosy for a change, to me just be sitting and stitching, and, you know, and think of you all sitting and stitching your pieces as well. And that's why I did that little video as well of the stitches, so that's homework for you all if you don't know those stitches. You could have a little practice in advance. I mean, obviously I'll talk about them as I'm doing them, and also ways I'm combining them, and so forth next week. But I thought at least if you could go and see that in, you know, on a plain piece of cloth. And if you feel inclined and you have the time, you could do a little practice in advance, just so that you know if I say fly stitch or cretin stitch or whatever, what I'm doing. So then I can just stitch and chat, and I just thought that would be nice for my birthday. And I keep saying it's for my birthday. To kind of justify it really, but I don't think it's really necessary to justify it. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what you think. So now where I cut that stitch, I'm not going to be too bothered because it's getting another stitch through it. Do you remember I cut that seam there to make my little bit of cloth bend where I wanted it to? So I've just taken an extra invisible base down. I can see what my thread's pulling out there, but I'm not worried about that either. It'll all get covered up in the end. So I'll just finish that off on the back. Now, so I'm happy with the shape of that. I can get that out now, I think. I just need something in this area here, and I don't think this is big enough, is it? And I don't really want it rectangular, it needs to be more crazy. Oh, it's a bit neat. See, I should not have trimmed that blue yet. I might get away with it. And I need to cut that little pointy bit off. First I'm going to see if I can make this fray nicely, because it's polyester. Doesn't. Again, the fluffy edge is going to be covered by stitching, so I shouldn't really probably be even doing this. That'll do. Stop. So if I line it up with the corner of my foundation, I wonder if I can just cut a little. I'm just going to cut it and see how it looks, and if it doesn't work I'll get something else. And so I'm just following this line somewhat. Not fun cutting a polyester upholstery fabric with blunt scissors. And if I put that there like that, still a bit liney. I'm still finding it a bit liney. So no, not that. How about some of this? Yeah, I like that better. Or I had the black, but then that's very dark, almost black. Oh no, that's too much the same. Talk amongst yourselves. Help me, help me. I can hear you all shouting what I'm supposed to do. Well, I can hear you, but I can't hear what you're saying. I think I'm going to do this thing again like I did with the sari silk. If I do it that way, double it up because it's thin. I could lay it on like that, couldn't I? I'm going to angle it slightly differently, I think. Like that. Yes, and then that can be the raw edge, that's fine. And dandy-o. If only I can make it behave. I'm going to start with one pin here in this corner. I'll try not to pin it to my bit of cloth on my table. So I'm just concentrating on this fold to start with. That's a bent pin. Go away. Keep pulling you out when you're not useful. Because I like that against that plain blue. I seem to have mostly silks in this, but you know. It's sumptuous, isn't it? Right, so that's that. I just want to make sure that I cover that blue, and actually I'm going to trim that blue back a bit first. Do you see that blue there? So I'm going to flip that back up and just trim, leaving myself a good ½ inch. It's not probably necessary to remove that little slither because it's only silk and it's thin. And then the same here, I could also, do you see where that's going to come down over that gold? I could also trim some of that back. So I'm going to lay that in the line and just trim, but not level with it. Don't do that, you'll have a gap. Leave yourself a bit of an overlap. It's hardly worth trimming off again, but that can go in the straps because it's precious. And then get that all where I want it. And finally I've got a raw edge. And put some pins. And turn it around. I think I'm just going to pin this all the way around because it's super slippy. I still keep I've put that bent pin over the other side of my pin cushion and I still keep going over there for it, even though it's right over there on its own. So I'm going to pin it through along the edge as well, making sure I'm in the foundation because then I'm going to trim it off before I start stitching it down. Excuse my arms. I don't want to keep turning it because it's so shifty. Shifty. And now I've got 2 pins instead of 1. There we go. I've got it. Whew, and breathe. And turn it over. So pretty, that. I think somebody's hand painted it, and I'm pretty sure I did get it from a charity shop. Can't remember if it was a scarf or if it was just a piece of cloth. Right. Oops. Go in the scraps. You're tiny, but precious, my precious. So that's just a tip if you've got these super fine cloths, rather than putting interfacing on them, which, you know, you can of course do that if you want. I'd done that with that silk cravat, I don't know how many years ago. But it does change the nature of the silk if you iron it to, you know, Vilene interfacing. I really puckered that, didn't I? Naughty. Never mind. So you could just double it up, or if you didn't want to, you know, double up your precious silk, you could just put something else behind, like some cotton muslin. I've got a huge old curtain which is cotton muslin, which I tend not to use as foundation because it's so fine, but for things like that I used it in my my bento rice bag that I showed on Wonky Wednesday, my bento box rice bag that I made. So this edge that's within the block, I'm going to do some invisible base stitches. Get the pins out as I go. Again, thread through silk. Thread through silk. Yeah, birthdays are funny. I'm always, well, not always, probably when I was younger I thought birthdays were wonderful. Sorry if my head came in then. I'm a bit ambivalent about birthdays these days. I don't sort of ignore them, but there's not the same, you know, glee and excitement that there is when you're 10 or whatever you are that it's your birthday, is there? Or maybe you feel differently about birthdays. Okay. You know, I mean, I'm only 59, that's not... I think it's because it's the last of my 50s, maybe that's why. I'm in my 60th year. My 60th tour around the sun. I do like that way of looking at it though, number of tours around the sun. Do you really think about that? That you physically, you yourself have been X number of times around the sun. I just think that's a nice way of looking at it. So maybe there's a sense of achievement at least. Yeah, 60 seems like proper grown up. And I think I've said that every decade since I was 30. That it seems proper grown up. Right, so those three across there, they've kind of made a diagonally thing, but it's not unpleasing, if that's a word. Unpleasant. Displeasing, that's it, isn't it? Right, so the final thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to just do a stitch all the way, and get that away now I think, all the way around the entire thing. I keep pulling at that puckered bit of sari. The other thing I'm going to do before I do that is just check that I have got all the seams sewn, which I have, because sometimes when you've overlapped, you know, and we didn't stitch right to the edge, you might find if you just pick up the folds here and there that somewhere's not stitched down, and then you can just invisibly tack it down as well. But that's all done all round, so all I'm going to do is get another bit of my darning cotton, and I'm just going to do a running stitch. And if you haven't trimmed properly at this point, or you know, thoroughly, you could turn over and do that from the back, just all the way around the edge of your foundation square, and then you know you're on the square. I might do that anyway, so just 1/4 of an inch away from the edge or something like that. And this is for my journal, so I'm not worried, but if it was going to be joined together with other blocks, or you know, with strips of plain cloth in between or something like that, then all that stitching would be covered anyway, but it just stops those edges flopping around. So I'm just gonna go, yeah, 1/4 of an inch from the edge and just do a running stitch all the way around the edge. And then I'm going to trim it properly. Of course, now my pins are on the wrong side. I might actually, when I get, trim this edge properly now. I could turn over and stitch from the other side, it's nearly trimmed. But you see, it is quite time consuming. How long has that taken me so far? We're over the hour, and I know there was some wittering at the beginning, as per usual. So imagine you wanted to make a whole quilt for your bed with these, and you wanted, I don't know, 6 by 8. So that's 48. So that's 48 hours just for the piecing. And then probably 10 times that for the embellishing. I don't know. Would depend how much embellishing you did, I guess. So it would be quite a project. And if you look at antique ones, or people, you know, modern makers who are mimicking antique ones, they're really, it's not a case of less is more, it's definitely more is more. That is the style, you know, with the buttons and the ribbons and the trims, and often silk ribbon embroidery, which I won't go into because I'm certainly no expert, and stump work, all those things. You know where I'm going to send you, those of you who watch her as well, go to Marion, because she's brilliant at all those kinds of things. You can just go mad with all that on them, if that's what you like to do and the look you like. Or you can do them, you could just make these piece blocks and then just choose one of the stitches, for example the herringbone stitch, and just do all the seams with herringbone. You see old quilts done in that way as well. You know, just every seam has got herringbone stitch over it, or feather stitch, or whatever you want to do. You could also do that. Or just couch something over all the seams. If you really think this is frou-frou beyond belief, you do you, as always. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of loads of lace and buttons and Suffolk puffs you could put on, what you call yo-yos, across the pond, I believe. All that, you know, you can throw all that stuff at it. It's like an explosion in a Victoriana antique shop. And if you don't like that, pare it down, do it differently, do a different colour palette, do it all whites, you know, or all cream, so it's just the textures, and just choose one colour thread for the embellishing of the seams, and, you know, like I said, just one stitch in one colour thread. That would give a very cool look. You could just take the basic technique or the basic principles and make them your own. Pinny pin pin. Also, another good use for them is curtains, you know, like if you want a heavy curtain somewhere, and then you wouldn't go to town too much with all the embellishments and everything, but if you had a smallish window that was a bit drafty because it wasn't double glazed or anything, nice thick Victorian style crazy quilt curtain would look fab. I know it's quite different to my usual style, but I do like it. So that's why we're doing it. And it is my birthday. Have I mentioned that already? It's actually not my birthday today, as you all know. I have to make these in advance. Slow Wi-Fi, blah blah, blah blah blah. I don't actually know what I'm doing on my birthday yet. But I shall tell you next week what I did. If it was anything interesting. Who knows? I think one or both of the children are coming home. I'm not completely sure, because they're both a bit between exams and holiday jobs and things like that. Okie dokie. Nearly there. Will my thread last? I think it will. And then I shall have a final trim. Pin. If you wanted to make a few of these and make yourself a cushion, or, you know, something, a bigger piece out of them, the joining methods would be similar to the log cabin joining methods. So if I don't get round to talking about those specifically, if you go and have a look at that, if you haven't seen, that's in the Wonky Wednesday playlist. Joining blocks. Depending on your project, there's some different ways there of joining log cabin blocks. It could equally apply to joining these. Right, so final trim. Now if you have all the rotary cutter doodad rulers and things, you could of course go and do that like that. I have, but they're not here, and I've got my cloth down and it makes not nice noises for you all, so I'm just going to snip with these and not complain about them. Oh dear. I must, you know, I am of course using those other my new snippies, but I don't want to blunt them when I've only just got them. My big Fiskars, which I've had for years, I hardly use. It's a bit silly really, isn't it? I mean, you know, they're there to be used, but I only use them if I'm sure I'm cutting cotton or you know, a natural fibre without any lycra or anything like that in them. I think it comes from my grandmother who had the dressmaking shears that nobody was allowed to use. Oh, so I made you rock and roll again. Okie dokie. So that is my crazy block. What's that? Oh, it's my battery about to run out. That's not good. Excuse me one moment. I shall plug you in. I'll try not to make you wobble. There we go. Charging, yes. Sorry about that. That's never happened before. There's a first for everything. Luckily I have my charger right here handy. Okay, I had a technical problem. I was a bit cross. I did another 20 or so minutes showing you a thing, and then I exported ready to my editing software, and the whole last bit was gone because I plugged you in, and apparently that stops the video. Well, I've learnt now. So I'm going to show you again. I went and made myself a cup of frothy coffee to cheer myself up. What I will show you is a grandmother's fan, which is a quilt block that can be made, you know, just as a quilt, but it's also often seen in crazy patchwork. And I did one here on this eco-dyed block that I made. It's up here in the corner. It's not very obvious in these cloths, but you see it's got 4 blades and then a semicircular corner piece here. So I'm going to show you how I did that. Very simple. I've already got it in progress, but I think there's enough left that you'll understand. So you need a template, a paper template. So you just need a square, which can be, you know, whatever size you want your fan to be. Mine, this one's about 4 inches. So this paper's not completely square, so I'm just going to fold it on a diagonal and trim it with my paper scissors, just to get it square, like so. And then you need something round to draw round, and this is basically the quadrant of a circle. So you need something quite big, and I used before, which nobody will ever see because I was just sitting here on my own talking to no one, my embroidery hoop. It's a very manky embroidery hoop. Got it in a charity shop. Hardly use it, but anyway, it's useful for this. So you just match it up sort of to the corners, 2 diagonal opposite corners of your square. And then get a pencil, and you know, it could equally be a plate or a compass even if you wanted to be fancy schmancy, to give yourself that quadrant. And then you cut that out with your paper scissors, like so. Okay, so and for your corner piece you need a smaller circle. And this is glass so I can see through. If you want to put guide marks, what you do is you want the radius of your circle. So this is 2.5 inches, so the radius will be 1.25 inches. And then you can just put a little mark, 1.25 inches up there. And 1.25 inches up there. Like that, and then, excuse my head if it comes in, and then line your, that's my head, sorry, I'll get out. Line your thing you're going to draw around on those 2 little marks, and then draw around it, and then you've got your quadrant. And then you want to put, and I straight away put a mark there, just in case it's not, you know, exactly even, so I know that's the right side. And then you cut that out first, that little corner piece, like so. keep it separate from my other templates. And then this piece, you've already got one line where you folded it, which is no longer even. Just match it up somewhat, fold it in half and crease it. And then fold it in half again, you know, as evenly as you can, and crease it. And then when you open it out, again you can write on it straight away 1, 2, 3, 4, so you know what order they go in, and then you just cut it, you know, on the fold lines. I've already got 300 of those laying about now. I'm exaggerating somewhat. I've got 2, so I won't bother cutting those out, but then you've got your templates. Okay, so here's the templates I was using. 1, 2, 3, 4, and my corner piece. Here's the piece I sewed that you didn't see me sewing. So all I did then, here's the piece for the 4th blade, which is I'm going to put here. Oops, let's move that clangy thing away. So here's blade number 4. So you want to put it on the wrong side of your cloth, and I'll leave a 1/4 inch seam. Make sure I stay in shot. Sorry, that's thrown me a bit having to do it all again. I'm going to leave a 1/4 inch seam here. Put a pin in it, and then get a pencil that will show up. So I've just got a normal soft pencil because it's light cloth, and then I've got this yellow watercolour pencil that shows up on dark cloth, but you know, whatever you've got. And then just draw yourself, whoops, get something to rest on, doesn't work on there. Draw yourself a line around your template. Whoopsie, it's really shifty. Just like that, all the way around. If you're going to make a lot of these, I would recommend making yourself a cardboard template. It's easier to draw around. And we can take that off. And that line didn't show up there very well, I'll just go over it a bit more. That's it, I hope you can see that. And I'm going to cut that out, leaving a good 1/4 inch seam all around. So I did exactly that with all 4 of them, but I left the template pinned on for the number, you know, until I stitched them. Let's cut that out, and then you want to stitch that in position number 4 in this case. So if you want to line up your drawn lines, because when your seam allowance isn't accurate, you just get a pin and go through the drawn line on this side and then feed it onto the drawn line on the other side, which you can't see but I can. And then do the same on the other corner. And that compensates for inaccurate seam allowances. And I've just put the pin straight through. Ouch, and poke myself with them. Longer pins would probably work better. And then pin in the middle there. And you can get that pin out and pin it there. And putting those pins through straight just means they all match up nicely and don't shift about. And pin that there. And then I'm just going to, where's my needle gone? Just sew along that line. And I'm going to sew right out to the edge. I'm just going to eyeball that. It just makes it easier when you come to turn the edge under in a minute. Do a back stitch to start. So just do a little running stitch all the way along that pencil line. To the other end. And get a knot in your thread. Excuse me. So yes, I put it all in my editing program, and I went downstairs and I checked that it was there, and I thought, hang on a minute, I'm sure it was longer than an hour and 1 minute. And then I had a scan to the end, and then I realised what had happened. So I fed Fred, I fed Stella, I fed the horses, and made myself a coffee, and here I am back again. Okay, so cut that off, and then press that, finger press that, or press it with an iron if you want to. And I like to then press these seams open, but it depends on the cloth. If you had a really fine cloth one side and a sturdier cloth the other, then you can press them both towards the fine cloth. You see what I mean? And again, if you want to get the iron to them, just go for it. I'm not hopping up and down. So then the next thing I do, rather than trying to put that on my block, where's my block? Well, I wouldn't put it on this block because this block's all done. But if you were going to put that on a block, let's put it on the wrong side, you can see better. It's a lot of fiddling then to be turning this under and stitching it down at the same time, I think. I think it's better to first base that seam. You know, I like to base things. So just, might have to fiddle with it a bit, and you can clip it if you've got a really curvy fan. But you just want to fold it against that pencil line, like so. And finger press or iron press. Where that seam's pressed open, you see it's reducing the bulk there. And then just turn it to the other side and put some pins in it. And that one, I'm doing it a bit at a time in case, because the silk doesn't hold the crease very well, so. And then do the next bit. It's a bit fiddly. You could of course just do it raw edge, and then you'd just cut with your, I'd cut it all with seam allowances, and then I'd lay it on and decide which seam you wanted under which, and then trim the top one. Do you see what I mean? So that there was an overlap. I'm doing this really quickly, making excuses for myself if it's not great. I just put my thumbnail there and just fold it against my thumbnail. Maybe wasn't the best idea to choose silk, and now I've got my pins on the wrong side, but that's how it has to be apparently. And this cotton's much better behaved. I think I don't even need to put a pin there. So then I would just invisible baste all the way along that curve. It's just, I think, one less thing to, you know, you're doing it in stages rather than all at once, having to turn the edge under and applique it down and so forth. Whoopsie. Now I've come to where I've got my pins on the wrong side. And that's super fine sari silk, which was a bad choice in terms of handling, but it's so pretty, that blue. And you see it's such a gentle curve, it doesn't really need clipping. You know about clipping seams, you just clip into the seam, not quite up to the where you're going to stitch. But it's not necessary for this. Whoopsie. Come on. And then when you've done that, the little corner piece, which I haven't shown you yet. Sorry, I thought I did show you, but you weren't watching because the camera died. The little corner piece, excuse me, I've decided to do raw edge. But you could equally do the same with the curve on the corner piece if you wanted to turn a seam under. This bit of thread is mincing up because it's nearly to the end. But I shall persevere since I'm nearly there. Will I get to the end? There we go, maybe. One more, maybe baby. Maybe baby. There we go. I don't have to go right to the end because that's the seam allowance. That'll do, pig. So there you go, I've got my little fan. It wouldn't say no to a press, of course, with the iron. And under normal circumstances I probably would do that. So then you've got your block and you've got it, maybe you've got it all pieced here and you've left a space. Or maybe you just want to make a plain block and just do a fan on it to go with your crazy, you know, whatever. So then that would sit up there in the corner, but the seam allowances would hang over the edge by their 1/4 inch, like so. And then here's my little quadrant that I cut out using the template when nobody was watching. And there I did it raw edge. I decided to have it raw edge here, and this side didn't need a seam allowance whatever because that's going against the edge of that. If you wanted to turn this edge under as well, this curved edge, then obviously you need to leave a seam allowance. I'm just doing exactly the same as I did there. So then that will get stitched over there. I'm not going to do it because it's the back of my block, it's just to give you the idea. And that would then hide those raw edges there on the fan blades. So then when you sew that down, what's also you'll see done quite a lot is you get some fancy lace of some kind and just tuck it under the edge of the seam, like so. Just pin it to show you. I might make another block in either maybe just one colour or just, you know, with a few less patches, and stitch this on and show you it next week. Right, you just trap that under, do you see what I mean? And then I would just invisible baste that down again. So you're going to have 2 lines of invisible basting. If you didn't want to do that, you know, if you wanted to just fiddle and pin and invisible baste in one go, then of course you can do that. I'll just put the pin so you can see the effect because I think they're really, really sweet. There we go. And I won't trim my lace because, you know. So that's a grandmother's fan. And then you can trim off your seam allowance there and there because you don't need them. Do you see? And then obviously on there as well, you can do all your fancy stitching and embellishing when you come to do your crazy block. So there we go. Grandmother's fan, take 2. So I really hope you like that, since I did it twice. It's just a little extra something. What else did I say in the 20 minutes that you didn't see? I don't think I really said anything else super important. So yeah, do go and, well, piece your block, and do go, and if you haven't yet, watch that other video called Stitches for Crazy Patchwork, if you need to. Maybe you already know them all, I don't know. And then next Monday, I'll come back with my block. I won't do anything else to it. I'll just leave it like that. I'll come back next Monday and I'll do some embroidery on it with you all. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye. Hello, I've come back again. Just because I started doing this with the fan, and I thought maybe I'd just show you quickly as a addition. So I put my centerpiece on, which I cut 5 sides. I use this bit of upholstery, and when I pinned it in place, I offered up my fan. You could even just pin it up at the top here so you can flip it out of the way where it's going to sit, and then made sure that this piece went underneath it. And now I've attached my first piece, which was this piece, And again, I've just made sure that I've got plenty going under the fan that I can trim off later. So now I don't need to put anything here. So then I'll turn it like that, and then I'll put my next piece down here somewhere. And then once I've got that piece on, well, let's just choose a piece. Since I've come back anyway, there's no getting rid of me this week, is there? What's that bit of purple? Will that work? So if that went there, just make sure there's enough to cover, like that. Don't think that's big enough really. Sorry, I should have planned ahead, but just on impulse I turned the camera back on. And now of course I can't find anything big enough. Let's have some sari silk. Double it up again. Actually that's quite nice with that bit of the braid showing there. Yeah, so I will pin that on and baste it down along there because I've got it double. Obviously you just stitch and flip if you had a single layer. Just making sure that there's enough under the fan. And then once I've got that on, then I can just carry on round here in the same way that we did before. So that's if you wanted to include a grandmother's fan in your block. And then of course when I'd pieced all those on, then I would tack that down, maybe trapping my lace under the edge if that was what I wanted to do. And then I would invisible base my little quadrant on. Okay, I hope you can see in your mind's eye how that will look. It just looks like a hot mess at the moment. So that really is it, and I hope that was a useful little addition for those of you that want to do a fan, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.